The ability to focus the mind for a sustained period of time evokes the state of being in the zone, which allows us to achieve the impossible. This occurs because the conscious mind shuts down to allow the wisdom of the unconscious mind and body to take over. Muscle memory takes over while the sense of you doing the task has been reduced. According to cognitive science, the analytical conscious mind, the ego persona, what you refer to as you, is located within the cerebral cortex, which covers the front of the frontal lobe of the brain. This part of the brain is known as the prefrontal cortex, PFC. It is a part of the brain that evolved later than many of the others in an effort to navigate through the increasing planetary obstacles we continually encountered. Cognitive science refers to the prefrontal cortex's analytical function as cold cognition or System 2. Cold cognition is the cognitive control function of the mind, which gives us the ability to exert effort and discern between this and that, and which formulates our opinions of right and wrong or good and bad based on our own personal experience. In our modern world, the cold cognitive aspect of the mind is continually overemployed from the beginning of life through education and then throughout working life, where it is thought that if we continue to force our effort continually, we will achieve our desired result. But as we all surely know, this is hardly ever achieved because our focus is constantly distracted by the bombardment of external stimuli. This analytical, active part of our mind in the prefrontal cortex is physiologically expensive if it is not supported by the more primal regions of the brain that we associate with the unconscious mind. The function of the unconscious regions of the brain is known in cognitive science as hot cognition or System 1. Hot cognition is the function of our mind and body that is automatic, spontaneous, fast, effortless, mostly unconscious, and thought to be emotionally driven. Hot cognition is located within the earlier developing primal regions of the brain and is associated with the unconscious. Its spontaneous and effortless function is what makes our head turn unconsciously when we see something beautiful in the environment. Maybe a handsome man or a ravishing woman, for example. And it can sometimes be a hindrance, as when we find ourselves unconsciously reaching for that piece of chocolate cake, a habit that arises from the way we evolved to seek sugar for momentary sustenance. On the one hand, hot cognition can produce all the miracles that spontaneously grow out of the mind and universe, and on the other hand, it can lead us to being unhealthy because there is an abundance of sugar that is constantly tempting us, for example. This is where the discernment of cold cognition is beneficial for our well-being. The positive aspect of hot cognition is what drives those unconscious, spontaneous miracles achieved by many sports people. It is also what allows a musician to play her instrument without having to think about it. It is what allows artists, no matter whether they are painters, writers, musicians, gardeners, or athletes, to express the unconscious wisdom of the universe that lays dormant within our hot cognition. In all of these examples, the cold cognition within the prefrontal cortex that gave birth to the sense of I, the personality, has shut down to allow the effortless flow of the universe to come to life. But we tend to think of ourselves as an I in the mind, separate from our body, and many of our philosophies and religions reflect this perspective. The sense of the mind-body dualistic split is overcome when the I is decreased, leading to an integration of hot and cold cognition where the mind is embodied and the body is mindful. The idea of the I as a ruler of the body is a notion going back to Plato's analogy in his Phaedrus of the charioteer and his wild horses that need to be tamed. Plato's charioteer is a metaphor for our mind as master, cold cognition, while the wild horses represent the untamed, animalistic, and ultimately unconscious body, but at the same time the natural and spontaneous movements of life, hot cognition. The person you think of as yourself the charioteer, with all these beliefs, desires, and attachments, is only your cold cognition in conflict with the hot cognitive processes, which appear unconscious and untamed when they are not disciplined. This overemphasizes the mind-body split and makes us believe that this is the way a human being is in a yang-oriented world. We experience embodied cognition, on the other hand, when our psychosomatic organism has reached a state of homeostasis, with perfect balance between yin and yang. When we cultivate yin, the sense of I submerges into the hot cognitive processes of the body, which evokes intelligent spontaneity. This intelligent spontaneity is the skill of the craftsman and the art of Wu-wei. The irony of skill, though, is that the cold cognition is required to process the information of any particular skill through intellectual understanding and constant repetition before it becomes ingrained in the hot cognition, becoming second nature. The skill and art of intelligent spontaneity is the consciousness of one who is in the zone. Being in the zone occurs when we cultivate yin. Accomplished athletes, writers, actors and actresses, artists, and other achievers are adept at cultivating yin in their lives. The master of any craft has embodied his skill to such a heightened state that his actions are essentially effortless and are devoid of thought or even a sense of a person doing the actions. The embodied skill of a craftsman, where cold and hot cognition have merged to evoke universal intelligence, is a metaphor for the enlightened and effortless mind of Wu-wei. This understanding is captured in the story of Cook Ting, also known as Butcher Ting, in the Zhuangzi text. In the story, Cook Ting is cutting up an ox for Lord Wen-wei. Lord Wen-wei is extremely impressed by Cook Ting's skill at cutting up oxen so effortlessly. Cook Ting explains that he encounters the ox with his spirit, and this allows the spiritual energy of the Tao to take over. He states, "What I care about is the way, which goes beyond skill. When I first began cutting up oxen, all I could see was the ox itself. After 3 years, I no longer saw the whole ox. And now I go at it by spirit and don't look with my eyes. Perception and understanding have come to a stop, and spirit moves where it wants. I go along with the natural makeup, strike the big hollows, guide the knife through the big openings, and follow things as they are. So I never touch the smallest ligament or tendon, much less a main joint." In China, Cook Ting's embodied skill and intelligent spontaneity is known as seeing from spirit. Seeing from spirit occurs when the sense of I has diminished, which essentially means that the cold cognition has decreased its influence so that we can perceive reality from the holistic hot cognition. The Cook Ting passage illustrates how intelligent spontaneity is evoked and realized as our nature when the sense of someone doing something has disappeared. Even when life is in motion and actions appear to be happening, they are effortless, because the sense of I doing it has disappeared. Thus, the non-doing of Wu-wei evokes effortless action, where the mind is not attached or stuck to any aspect of reality. Cook Ting's effortlessness and unstuck mind is a metaphor for the effortless mind in Wu-wei all the time, which is the enlightened state of a sage. This essentially means that our natural state is to be in the zone all the time, but it has been eclipsed by our intellectual training, which, with its tendency to dissect life, eclipses this reality. The Cook Ting story underscores the fact that when we are in intelligent spontaneity, we are harmonizing with the environment. The cook's skill demonstrates that when we cultivate yin, evoking intelligent spontaneity, we see that the apparent duality of an inner world isolated from the outer world is an illusion. In the effortless state of intelligent spontaneity, both realities are one and the same. But this perception can only be achieved when yin cultivation has transformed the mind into the natural effortless state. The effect of intelligent spontaneity occurs because yin cultivation methods bring us in touch with a function of our nervous system that has been suppressed from overdoing the yang. In activating the PSNS through yin cultivation, we get in touch and become more intimate with the enteric nervous system, ENS, located in the gut. The ENS is a mesh-like network of neurons that governs the function of the gastrointestinal system. It is more commonly known as gut instincts. Our gut instincts come from the enteric nervous system, and we can tune into them by down-regulating the sense of I. If we do, we will hear messages from the gut louder and more clearly, and we can act in accord with spontaneous reactions and judgment calls. We begin to move as though we can sense the future that we are about to experience. But all that has really happened is that the ENS is functioning without the hindrance of the prefrontal cortex and, like Cook Ting, is aligned with the environment. Activating the ENS evokes our natural spontaneity, removing the fog of intellectual discernment. When we cultivate yin, our gut instincts are in sync with the environment and with each situation. This allows us to be natural and effortlessly spontaneous, which are signs of mental authenticity and a pure heart. Lao Tzu's teaching of sticking to the yin with a conservative application of the yang aligns you with the universal order of Tao. Your entire being becomes an extension of the universe, as the universe has become your entire body. Its magic and splendor come to life as your perception is cleansed and intelligent spontaneity has been evoked, bringing universal harmony to the world through your consciousness.